Closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.
Ang adlaw kaninyong tanan atong isgutan karon kay atong lesson na gitawag na logic. Actually, this is all about mathematical logic. May logic sa philosophy, pero let's talk about math logic. So, to start with, let's start with the definition first. So, magsugod ta sa unsa gipasabot na niya ba in it's how can we define that? Here, as you can see, logic is the study of formal reasoning. Again, I want to emphasize the word formal here. When we see formal class, this is all about being formal. Being, let's say, you are guided with a set of rules, properties, or let's say laws. That's all about the formal reasoning based upon statements or proposition. Later, we're gonna talk about a lot of prepositions or statements and reasoning also. So to continue, it's all about formal reasoning based upon statements or proposition. The word here next is reasoning. When we say reasoning, it's all about being or doing the thing that you already done, or you're giving reason in the things that you are doing. So the reasoning part of logic has two kinds. First kind is called deductive reasoning. When I say deductive, it's all about giving examples in the given situations. For example, let's say Detective Conan. I know you're familiar with that. So there's already a crime happened, and you have to know where, when, why, how that happened. Or in very specific way, you can use deductive, particularly in sciences, because you're doing an experiment based on what you already know, the topic that has been discussed by your teacher. Deductive reasoning there is you already know the experiment that you have to or you want to do, and you will gonna ask the questions why, when, where, and how, and when, and those are deductive reasoning already. Deductive reasoning is all about knowing already the big picture of that event, and you want to know the very parts of it. That's deductive reasoning. And the second kind of reasoning we have here, inductive. So here, inductive reasoning, you are doing first the examples before you conclude the general idea about something. For example, you are confused with that, or with the situation itself. You want to know first. You're thinking that, let's say you are in love with someone. Before you conclude that you're in love with someone, you think about, I like her actions, her behavior, or her dress up, or something like that, and you realize at the end that you're in love with that person. So in that case, you are doing already the inductive reasoning. So without further ado with this definition, let's start with the very core concept, the formal reasoning. That's logic or mathematical logic. So here we have five tools or kinds of reasoning that you're gonna use, or composition of logic or mathematical logic. First, the conditional. Second, inverse, converse, contrapositive, and biconditional. So these are the components of what we call mathematical logic or math logic. So to start with, as you can see, I have here a conditional. We have here P implies Q, inverse, negative P or negation of P implies negation of Q, converse, we have Q implies P, and contrapositive, negation of Q implies negation of P, and the biconditional, both or P implies both Q or P, or in vice versa. So to give you an example, we have here an example. So for example, we have, it's a quadrilateral. That's our P. Again, I want you to understand the formula itself. This is the formula. We start with P that implies Q. A negation of Q implies P. And I want to emphasize also that this part here is positive idea, and this part, the inverse, is negative. So to continue, our example is it's a quadrilateral. That's our P. That's our P. It has 4 sides. That's our Q. So if we're gonna use these statements here, the propositions or statements, the 5 statements that we're gonna do right now, we must use the word if then. So to argue it, or to give an example, let's have conditional first. Again, our example is all about it's a quadrilateral. That's our P, and Q, it has 4 sides. So let's continue. If it's a quadrilateral, then it has 4 sides. So in this case, actually these are all if then statement, the 5 if then. This is part of the logic idea. So our P here actually is the first part, and we just add only the if and the word then with these 2 propositions. These are called propositions. The first part is the hypothesis, and the second part is called conclusion. So here, if it's a quadrilateral, then it has 4 sides. This is conditional statement because we just implies our P with a Q. P implies Q. So that's the first part of the conditional, of the logic idea. Now let's proceed to the second part. We have here inverse. So the word inverse is the negation of P implies negation of Q. So this is a negative idea because we are using the opposite of the given. So we have here, what we're gonna do is we just have to add the word not. Actually here, if it is, we just need to add here the word not. If it is not a quadrilateral, then it has, we're gonna put here the word not also. Then it has not 4 sides. It has not 4 sides. So, or it hasn't. Yeah, that should be the case. So we have to put the negative. Negation of P implies negation of Q. It hasn't 4 sides. Is it true or correct? It has it. So it will become it is not 4 sides. So I stand corrected. It should be it is not a quadrilateral. It is not 4 sides. So again, we have to put the word if and then. So if it's not a quadrilateral, then it is not 4 sides. This is the idea of inverse. Actually, this is just the same with conditional, but in opposite meaning, or the idea is opposite. Now let's have the converse. The converse of this is just the arrangement is different. At first, we start with P as it's a quadrilateral. In converse, we just have to start with Q. In here, Q implies P. So that is converse or converse. So we're gonna do is we start with Q. So this will become if it has 4 sides, then it is a quadrilateral. So the idea here is you just need to start with a Q, and it should be implies with P. So it has, if it has four sides, then it is a quadrilateral. So that's the concept of converse, and its opposite, or if this is, if converse or converse, it depends on your how you read it. If converse is positive, the negative meaning or the opposite meaning is called then contrapositive. In contrapositive class is you have to give the not, actually you just need to put the word not here. If it hasn't, or if it is not four sides, if it is not four sides, it is not a quadrilateral. So that's the idea of contrapositive. The same concept, Q and P also, but you have to negate. You give the opposite meaning. So not, so if we will say a while ago, when we say if it is four sides, then it is a quadrilateral. In contrapositive, you put the negation or the negative or the opposite meaning. Now the last one is biconditional. So here in number 5 is biconditional. When we say biconditional, actually you just need to write the if and only if in the middle. So it's a quadrilateral, so you just need to continue. It's a quadrilateral if and only if it has four sides. So this is the idea of biconditional. You just need to put if and only if. So for your task, to check if you have understand what I'm talking about right now, please answer this one. This is two parallel lines never intersect. So let's start with this. So your task is two parallel lines never intersect.